I think we all know by this point just how great the DC animated universe was. It was amazing not just because it was a children's show that anyone of all ages could enjoy, but because this show would often push the boundaries in what it was willing to teach us as we grew up, whether that be as kids, teenagers, or even as adults, because we're all learning something to this day. And while it wasn't exactly perfect, a lot of the shows did at least try their best to leave decent messages with everyone who watched them. And so, of course, when I start to cover things like Batman Beyond, and finally taking a look at the show from a far more adult perspective than when I was like 7 years old watching that show, I've come to realize just how much messaging was left in these shows and just how much of an impact it has led on my own personal life as I've gotten older, which is crazy to say that these cartoons have impacted my life. And oddly enough, one of the things Batman Beyond seemed to deal with at least a lot in the first season is this idea of toxic and or false love, and how careful you should be in looking for love with a certain demographic of people. Last week, I decided to cover Melanie and Terry's relationship, but this week, I wanted to take a bit of a different approach, and it all has to start with Inque. Now, who is Inque exactly? Inque is a corporate saboteur and assassin. Formerly Dina Clay, she was originally just a regular person like anybody else, but offered herself up to be a biogenic mutant in the not-so-far future in order to gain a lump sum of money, and uses her symbiote-like abilities, for lack of better term, in order to be the perfect saboteur and assassin. She can shape her body into just about any form that she feels like taking, and as well, she is pretty much unkillable and impervious to any form of damage, except for one. And that singular form of damage is water. It essentially breaks down her molecular structure and does not allow her to properly use her abilities. And of course, along with water, she is also weak to any sort of sub-zero temperatures, as it ruins her elasticity, because she's kind of like a puddle of mud in that sense. Now, Inque is unique in the fact that she was Terry's first true supervillain that we saw him fight as Batman, due to her appearance being super early on. She is also one of the villains who poses the most threat to not only Terry, but Bruce, because she did break into the Batcave at one point, and not only infiltrated there, but also almost killed both Batman and Bruce Wayne, and she still holds a gigantic grudge against both of them for that incident. Her introductory episode is fairly bog standard, and not really why I wanted to talk about Inque, so I'm just glossing over her first appearance, because I think it's her second appearance in the first season that really cemented her as a character. She was one of the first villains to truly be reoccurring in this show, specifically being reoccurring in this first season, outside of course, Powers, who is more of an overarching villain. She's more of a villain of the week type of deal who appears honestly a fair majority of the time, especially in this first season. It's really not until episode 11 that she is utilized, in my opinion, in one of the more novel ways in which this show chose to utilize a villain. Much like many other villains in the DCAU, she's going to be used to try and teach the viewer a sort of lesson. A lesson in both false love and obsession, and how that will drive somebody to do terrible things.
No, not you. And if you wanted something, you just took it. But look at you now. All you've got is me, and you're just about all I got. That's why I'm staying here, even if they don't pay me what I'm worth.
That is Aaron Herburst, the key subject of this episode. Aaron currently works at Gotham Cryogenics and is keeping an eye on Inque after she has been imprisoned. But Aaron seemingly has fallen for Inque head over heels. But what's weird about his love for her is that he doesn't really seem to be in love with Inque the person, and by far is more in love with Inque as an ideal. He loves the creation of Inque that he has made for himself in his own mind, and he loves Inque's powers. He is in desperate want for her powers because he wants to escape the current life he is living. He is extremely unhappy. He is by himself and alone, presumably starting to get into his 30s. As well, he just lost his job because dude was low-key doing some seriously creepy things with Inque while she was frozen in that block of ice. Is any of this starting to sound familiar? The dude is pretty much an incel who is seeking validation and power in any place that he can get it. He is so fed up at this point that he decides it is a better option to free a literal psychopath and killer in Inque, all in order for him to potentially be able to get with her and gain some sort of powers that she might have. Seriously though, he literally let a killer and known saboteur out of her prison cell in Gotham Cryogenics just so he could potentially get some. Yeah, that's the type of dude we are dealing with in this episode. And Aaron himself, he's not necessarily all bad, but the guy he's low-key your stereotypical media loser. And he is looking for any sort of validation and or love anywhere he can find it. It's not a little weird to anybody other than me that the dude pretty much just prattles on about his miserable life to the only woman who will listen, and by listen I mean is forced to, while sitting in a cryogenically frozen box, listen to somebody that she is probably never would think twice about in her regular everyday life. And Inque knows this, and she's going to take advantage of the fact that he is extremely vulnerable and lonely, especially because she needs help on a genetic level. But she's not going to be very coy about it.
How could I not know? All those months of listening to you prattle on and on about your pathetic life.
You could hear me?
Yes, Aaron, I could hear you.
Inque is rapidly degenerating. Essentially, she can no longer switch her form from anything outside of the one we currently see. She cannot shapeshift, which of course deteriorates her value when it comes to being a saboteur and assassin, so she wants to fix this as soon as possible, and she's going to use Aaron as a means to an end. Now, I just want to say, on parts of both of these characters, they both are taking advantage of one another. Aaron is taking advantage of somebody who needs help and is finally willing to listen to him and just do things for him. And Inque is going to take advantage of the fact that Aaron is lonely and desperately wants someone to be with. Aaron's ultimate end goal in this entire relationship, if you want to call it that, is simply to get powers like Inque and to be like her, and partly to be with her as well, but that's more of a secondary objective. Inque, of course, doesn't really care for the dude at all and just sees him as a means to an end. Both characters are using each other, but I think it's worth noting that Aaron seems a little bit more invested in a potential relationship than, well, obviously Inque does, because she isn't interested in the slightest. And I think that's where it connects back to the episode with Melanie, in the idea that he is searching for love in such a toxic place. I'll be honest, it's not like Aaron is horrifically bad looking or anything. He might be socially awkward, but the dude isn't terrible, and he could probably find a relationship somewhere else, yet he seems to gravitate towards Inque for a very specific reason that isn't just all about her powers, even if that's what he says out loud.
To be like you.
You're serious, aren't you?
Dead serious. The power you've got, I want it. I've been wanting it a long time.
Then you'll get it.
This love that Aaron feels isn't genuine, nor is it any semblance of real. Aaron thinks that he wants this, and that this is his only path forward to being loved. Now, you could argue that there is a societal component in this, but I don't think I'm qualified to go into that, to keep it honest with all of you guys. As well, I don't really know what the society of Batman Beyond looks like without simply just comparing it directly to ours, and those two things are slightly different. But it is abundantly clear that the love Aaron is searching for isn't exactly a healthy kind, nor do I think Aaron is a particularly healthy person in and of himself. Aaron has more or less attached himself to the ideal of who he thinks Inque is in his own mind, and has basically obsessed over the infatuation and crush he created for her all of those months ago while she was sitting in prison, and has pretty much ignored any sort of flaws and or unbecomings of Inque that she displays. He doesn't seem to see past that because he is too caught up in what he sees in her, what he's made up of her in his own mind, if that makes sense. He doesn't see Inque for who she truly is as a person, and I think that's slightly a meta commentary on how we look at people in our daily lives, specifically crushes. We believe that they are perfect and that they can do no wrong. We start to build a sort of look for them in our own minds, and that look often isn't what reality is. And I think that's what Eren has himself wrapped up in. It also doesn't help that dude is extremely lonely and is kind of just a loser. He doesn't do much outside of work and hanging out at his house by himself. Eren craves power, adventure, and a woman that will love him, but the way in which he goes about seeking it is probably one of the worst you could possibly do. And in the end, when he thinks he's about to get everything that he has so desperately wanted, he ends up getting the short end of the stick in potentially the worst way imaginable. Inque finally decides to give Eren the power he has so desperately been seeking, but unfortunately for Eren, Inque is extraordinarily cruel with the way she decides to go about doing it. She doesn't bother to give him a full dose of the mutagen that she took, instead only bothering to give him a half dose, leaving him halfway mutated and a complete utter freak that nobody would touch with a 10-foot pole, basically reaping all of the negatives of the abilities Inque has with absolutely zero positives.
Out of my way!
You promised! You promised!
Loser.
Sometimes forget just how harrowing some of the imagery in these shows was, especially when I was watching them as a kid. The shit was kind of crazy. But regardless, getting back on topic, Eren pretty much didn't get anything that he wanted at all. He got the short end of the stick and lost everything that he was hoping to gain by helping a literal psychopathic killer. Yeah, not his finest moment. And what makes it even more upsetting and sad is that the process will only go on to repeat itself, as we see that he is, much like Inque, in a prison cell in which a woman is going to look after him and dote on him, a woman, mind you, that Eren most likely has zero interest in, but that the woman seems to enjoy taking care of him because he's someone she can talk to, and he's there and will listen to her, and we just see this vicious cycle continue. It's honestly just an extremely sad episode, but it's also one of my favorites. I also don't think it's, an accident that one of his eyeballs quite literally looks like Inque. I think that was done on purpose. Now, we can sit here today and we can talk all about just how terrible this way in which Eren looked at love is, but we all fall for the exact same trap on a daily basis. We all make up machinations of the person we like. At least when I say we all, I'm typically speaking to people around my age, say from about 16 to 25 years old. We all tend to make up these mental images of our loved ones and the people we have crushes on, and we don't ever truly try to see these people for who they are, but rather for the caricature that we keep of them in their heads. And I think that's part of the reason we make relationships so hard in the modern day and age. Because Eren was unable to dissociate from this, he attached himself to a very terrible person because at the end of the day, he believed there was something better that she could offer. It might also be a slight indictment on some of your favorite online adult creators that they are selling a fantasy that someone like Eren would never have the ability to achieve. I'll never fault the person who does that because they're really just trying to get away in life, just like the rest of us. But I'll also never fault the person who buys because, in all honesty, they're not too different from the rest of us as well. They just want to seek that level of intimacy that they may or may not believe they can get via this fake love, if that's what we're gonna call it, because YouTube would not like the real terminology, and I still gotta pay bills. We could also delve into the fact that For a long time throughout movies in Hollywood, evil was represented by being sexually desirable, but I think that's a topic for another video that I have on mind, so just watch out for that one. Overall, this show in particular is one of the ones that truly gets me thinking at a higher level when it comes to rewatching this show as compared to even some of the DCAU's other counterparts. Justice League and Justice League Unlimited were far more in between when it came to episodes like this, but I feel like every episode of Batman Beyond I watch has some sort of lesson behind it, except for maybe the pilot. It very much reminds me of Static Shock, and I think it's no coincidence the two were made in a similar time. It's as though everything Dwayne McDuffie decided to touch turned to literal gold. And not just gold as in great superhero media, but gold as in media that you can watch not only as a kid, but as an adult and still find lessons from. Okay, I think that's enough rambling. I think I got my point across. I just want to say thank you all for watching this video. I truly appreciate it. You all are absolutely wonderful, and I'm so glad you chose to watch this video. If you want to leave a like, please leave a like. It helps out the channel a lot. If you want to leave a dislike, please dislike, and then tell me down below in the comments why, as I believe constructive criticism is the best way for me to evolve as a creator. As well, you can subscribe. It's free. You can always unsub later. And finally, I do run a Patreon in which you can support these videos. It's linked in the description for $1 a month. You'll get access to these videos unedited and early, along with access to the channel's Discord, in which you can speak to me personally or just get to know some of the other audience members that enjoy content like this. And finally, I do have memberships above $1 in which you will be shouted out at the end of each and every one of these videos, just like these lovely people here. So, in no particular order, eSibert13, shout out Gabriel Lafonte, shout out Transgears1, VideoGamer75, Golden Boy 420, Donovan Gomez, Dakota Rawson, and MC Bomb 27. You all are amazing, and I hope you all have an absolutely fantastic day.